Parents and sister got me expelled from college with false accusation because she was rejected from her dream college. 7 years later, they showed up at my door saying she passed away in an accident. This is gonna be kind of long, please read until the end because there's a lot of context. 7 years back, I was expelled from college 3 months after I started because of a false and horrible rumor that my parents started about me. The only reason they did so was because my sister wanted to get into the same college but couldn't, which shouldn't have come as a shock because her grades were nowhere as good as mine, but for some reason, she and my parents were still devastated when they found out she hadn't been accepted into her dream college but I had. To my parents, she had always been the golden child, so I was not surprised when they refused to cover my tuition and told me to make my own arrangements. Obviously, they were trying very hard to make sure that I wouldn't be able to go to the college of my choice, just because my sister couldn't. But I wasn't ready to give up, so I spoke to my grandparents and convinced them to co-sign my student loan, and that's how I ended up, against all odds, exactly where I wanted to be. I had already moved out of my parents' house because I was clearly no longer welcome there. I don't think I ever had been, in the first place, but by then, the environment had become so hostile that I could tell that they were willing to kick me out, and so, before they could do it, I left on my own. But unfortunately, somehow, my sister found out that I had ended up in that college anyway, and she complained to our parents. So she, along with a couple of her friends and our parents, started spreading rumors that I was dealing in college, and they take stuff like that very seriously. As soon as the rumor started picking up speed, the authorities found out about it, and I ended up being reported. There were a lot of investigations that were cut out by the cops and the authorities, and somehow, they were able to find a stash of marijuana in my dorm room. I'm guessing my parents bribed their way into it, and it wouldn't have been difficult for somebody to sneak their way into the room and place it there without getting caught, since my roommate and I had a lot of friends who kept coming in and out of the room. Besides, there were already a lot of rumors doing the rounds about me selling drugs on campus, and a couple of people had even said that I had offered it to them, probably either because my family had bribed them or maybe just because they wanted to be a part of the drama. Either way, the situation seemed impossible, and even though I knew I was innocent and so did my roommate, the authorities did not look kindly upon me. It would be impossible to pinpoint anybody to blame for all that, especially when the truth was so complicated, and so, even though I begged and pleaded, it made no difference and I was expelled. And if you think that that was the worst of it, there's a lot more to come. After I got kicked out of college, I literally had nowhere else to go. My parents had told my grandparents about what had been going on with me, and they wanted nothing to do with me because they believed that there was no smoke without fire. Besides, the evidence seemed irrefutable at that point, and I don't exactly blame them for not believing me when I told them that I was innocent and had nothing to do with drugs because of the stash in my room. Anyway, I didn't have any money because whatever I had saved from working part-time jobs in high school had all been spent already while I was trying to make arrangements for myself to be able to go to college. The student loan was ineffective because, well, I'd been expelled. But I still had to return whatever money had been spent on my education already, and I knew that I could not default on it because otherwise, my grandparents would have to pay for it. I was homeless and unemployed, and I only had a couple of months as a grace period before I had to start repaying the amount that had already been paid for my tuition. The only thing that I got slightly lucky about was that marijuana had been decriminalized in my state, so I didn't get into a lot of trouble with the law because that was the only drug that had actually been found in my possession, not narcotics or whatever. But back then, that was not really something that gave me any hope at all, though now I recognize the huge blessing that it was. Anyway, after I got kicked out, I had nobody to count on, but, thankfully, my roommate was very nice to me and her parents took me in for a couple of weeks. However, I did not want to be a burden on them, so I took up the first job that I could find and started working as a cashier in a grocery store. I lived as truly as I could, started saving up money, and within a month, I had thanked my roommate and her parents and left so I could move into the cheapest apartment I could find. It was in a terrible neighborhood and I had to share the place with 3 roommates. Even though the apartment itself was small and cramped, I made the best of my situation. I started taking up more jobs, and even on the weekends, I wouldn't allow myself to rest because I knew that I had nobody else to count on. In all honesty, I don't know how I survived those years because it was all just a blur to me. All I did was work, all I thought about was work, and the only time I would ever feel happy was when I received the payments for my work. I won't bother with the more boring details of my life, but in the past, I have worked as a receptionist, waitress, bartender, saleswoman, and whatnot. It was hard work, none of it was easy, but somehow, I got through it and managed to move out of that tiny apartment into a better one, which was still kind of small, but at least I didn't have to share it with anyone. And then, finally, I bought my own house last year with my own money because a couple of years ago, I finally struck gold. About 4 years back, when I had been working as a receptionist at a real estate firm, the only thing that I would think all day was that I could do this too. So when a spot opened up, I applied and luckily, I got the job. Since then, there has been no looking back because I knew that I had to make the most of my opportunity. I didn't have a college degree like most people there, but what I did have was experience with people, and I guess I was charming enough, so slowly, but steadily, I started climbing the corporate ladder. And last year, finally, I was promoted to an upper management position, and I think I've never been more proud of myself in my entire life. After my promotion was finalized, I decided to buy a house of my own after selling people's houses for so many years. I don't mean to brag, but I literally went from rags to riches because I make 6 figures annually and I'm one of the best and most valued employees at my company. I've thought about going back to college a couple of times, just to finish my degree, but other than that, I'm really happy with my life and how it has turned out. Of course, I've had no contact with my family over the past couple of years, and neither have they tried to contact me. I'm fine with that. I don't really miss them and I think I'm much better off without them. I do sometimes talk to my friends from high school, and of course, I'm still in touch with my roommate from college because we became good friends, even though we had known each other for just 3 months. The only people I've never missed in the past 7 years are my parents and my sister because they tried to ruin my life, even though they didn't succeed. I've not heard from them, nor have I heard about them because I've made it very clear to everyone that I know that I don't want to hear about anything that they are going through, good or bad. People have been respectful of that, so unfortunately, I didn't find out that my sister had passed away last month until my parents visited me recently with that news just this week. When they showed up, I was obviously very surprised because I hadn't been in touch with them for the last 7 years, and naturally, I didn't know how they had even found out where I lived. Later on, they told me that they had begged my roommate and her parents to tell them, and eventually, they did, but only because they kept bringing up the fact that they had already lost one daughter and they didn't want to lose another. Anyway, when they showed up, the first thing that they did was hug me and tell me how proud they were of me. It felt odd and unnatural because even when I was younger, they never appreciated me for any of my achievements, out of fear that it would make my sister jealous. But anyway, at the time, I had been really shocked by the news of my sister's passing, so I tried to be kind to them in spite of everything they had done to me in the past. We made some small talk. They told me about the car accident that had taken my sister's life and cried about it for a bit while I consoled them. And before people started calling me a doormat, it had been 7 years since I had seen them last, so of course, I was also having a lot of mixed feelings about the situation. I never liked my sister, I hadn't exactly forgiven them for what they had done to me either, but even then, I'm still a human being. I just couldn't bring myself to slam the door on my grieving parents, especially when I was feeling so lost and confused. If that makes me a doormat, like a lot of my friends have already said, then fine, maybe I am. But anyway, after speaking to my parents for a while, they finally addressed the elephant in the room and told me that they were here to apologize for everything that had happened when I was in college, and told me that they shouldn't have done what they did. At the time, they had just been too blinded by the fact that one of their daughters hadn't managed to get into the college that she wanted, and so, when my sister accused me of being an addict and told them that I did not deserve this, they decided that they were going to set the record straight for everyone, and in the process, they ended up ruining my life. They claimed that until recently, when they spoke to my roommate, they had no idea that I actually had nothing to do with drugs and that my sister had been lying about the whole thing. According to them, she had apparently been feeding them with lies about me ever since I had left home, and although they had been skeptical to believe it initially, she had lied to them with such conviction that ultimately, they had no choice but to believe that I was a drug addict who had apparently plagiarized all her essays to get into college before she had even applied. And of course, after that, the college authorities must have believed that she was the one who had plagiarized it and rejected her on the basis of that. Naturally, no such thing had happened, she had made it all up, and they were finally realizing it now after speaking to my roommate. So now, they wanted to apologize to me and try to repair their non-existent relationship with me. But when they said that, I don't know why, I just lost it at them, and I started screaming, telling them that they had no business coming here to apologize to me 7 years after they had tried to ruin my life in the worst way possible. I told them that I did not believe a word of their lies, and the fact that they were trying to throw their dead daughter under the bus just because she couldn't defend herself anymore was even more despicable. That's exactly what I thought they were doing. I thought that they were trying to make it seem like they had no idea that I was innocent, and my sister had convinced them that I was a terrible person who did not deserve to go to the college of my dreams, so by hook or by crook, I had to get kicked out. But I did not buy it. I thought that they had known it all along, and they had in fact helped my sister get me kicked out somehow. So I accused them of it outright, and I told them that I did not want their apology because I knew that they were only apologizing since they had lost one daughter, and now I was their only hope because they wouldn't have anybody else to count on to take care of them when they were old or to let them play with grandkids and stuff. I told them that I could see right through them, and they actually seemed shocked when I started yelling at them to get out. They told me that they were telling me the truth and that they were not trying to throw anybody under the bus. They genuinely had no clue that my sister had been lying to them about me, and they had nothing to do with any sort of bribery or planning anything in my room like I was accusing them of doing. But I wasn't having any of it. I just kept yelling at them until they left, and then I called my roommate up to speak to her because even though I really love and value her, I was kind of annoyed that she hadn't thought it was important to tell me that she had met with my parents and given out my contact info to them just like that. So I called her up and I confronted her about it, and she told me that she had indeed done that, but it was only because they seemed pretty desperate to contact me. And just like me, she had found it incredibly difficult to say no to grieving parents like that, especially when they were using that against her. So I could understand where she was coming from, but even then I was not happy about the situation. Anyway, I still explained everything that happened and told her about my fight with my parents, after which she told me something very surprising, and since then, I've been thinking about the way I behaved with them. Apparently, when she refused to tell my parents where I lived and accused them of ruining my life with their lies when I was in college, they seemed to have no idea that I wasn't actually a dealer or an addict. They had told her the exact same version of things that they had told me, and they seemed to actually believe it. Obviously, my roommate did not like that, and she told them the whole truth. She told them all about the rumors that started spreading in college all of a sudden. The people who stood up against me and accused me, and of course, the stash that was found in my room even though it hadn't been there before, it got me expelled. At first, they refused to believe her and said that even though they were willing to fix their relationship with me, they couldn't let her paint me as a saint or something. But the more she went into the details, the more my parents realized that she was actually telling them the truth, and they had been lied to all along. They genuinely looked surprised when they found out the truth from my roommate, and even she seemed shocked because she had always assumed that they had been involved in everything, but judging by their reactions, she even started to believe that maybe it hadn't been them at all. Maybe my sister had been the only person behind all of it and had just convincingly lied to everybody to make me look like the bad guy. And because they looked so surprised, she finally decided to give out my contact info to them so they could at least meet me in person and sort things out. She did apologize to me for doing it without consulting me first, but she thought that if she did tell me beforehand, I would refuse to meet them. And it's true, I probably would have refused, but keeping all that aside, whatever had to happen has already happened. We met and we got into that fight, and now, I don't know what to think. I've realized that they might have been telling me the truth about not having anything to do with whatever happened in college, apart from making the mistake of believing my sister. Maybe she orchestrated the entire thing and they just believed and supported her. In all probability, they genuinely meant their apology when they came over the other day and I yelled at them for no reason. I feel bad about the whole thing and I'm considering reaching back out to them somehow, but the only reason I haven't done that so far is because a tiny part of me thinks that whatever I did was long overdue and I don't need to feel sorry about it. So Wibda, if I did not reach out and apologize to my parents? Update 1, alright, so I've thought about the situation for a very long time and I've decided that I'm not going to apologize to them. I don't even have to speak with them if I don't want to. I've spent 7 years of my life without them, and I think I can go the rest of my life without talking to them as well. A lot of my friends already think that I was a total doormat for letting them back into my life in the first place, and they believe that I shouldn't even have opened the door when they showed up, but that's already been done. Anyway, it's only my roommate who has a different opinion, and she thinks that I did the right thing by letting them in and at least getting the closure that I needed. Even if, now, I don't want them back in my life, at least they got to know the truth about my sister, and I also got to know that they were probably not even aware of what was going on with me or even what they themselves were doing because of all the lies that they had been told. I have to hand it to her, my sister was pretty conniving and planned everything very well when it really came down to it. If she had put that much effort into pulling up her grades, she wouldn't have been rejected from the college in the first place and nobody would be in this mess. We shouldn't speak ill of the dead, but well, I think she pretty much brought this on to herself. Anyway, I'm not saying that it was all her fault. My parents were equally at fault for just buying into whatever she said without even verifying anything for themselves. I think they were just so convinced that their darling golden child could do no wrong that at some point, they actually started gaslighting themselves into going against the facts that they knew. For instance, when I have always had better grades than her, why would I feel the need to plagiarize her essays? If they had any brains at all, they would have figured it out on their own, but like I said, it was wishful thinking on their part. They convinced themselves that I was into drugs, even though I had never shown any symptoms or signs of the same, just so they could believe all the life that they had been told and buy into these stupid plans. They're not exactly innocent in all this, and maybe they didn't know the whole truth until recently, but that's really not an excuse for having treated me so poorly their entire lives. And even if I somehow excuse whatever happened when I was in college and chalk it up to the cunningness of my sister, I still can't forgive them for everything that happened before that. Like I said, all my life I've been treated badly by them, and no matter what I did, it was just not good enough. Of course, I partly blame my sister for that. She was an attention-seeking brat already, and when she started getting fat in 6th grade, she got worse. I'm not trying to body shame anyone, but until 6th grade, we were identical, but at a certain point in time, we hit puberty, and I guess her cravings were worse than mine. She was completely out of control, and instead of trying to get her to be healthy, our parents actually indulged her and she just kept gaining weight. Naturally, she started getting bullied in school and people started calling her the Fat Martin, our last name. She was already quite unpleasant to be around, which made her even more bitter, and she started hating me for no reason, as if I was the one who had been responsible for any of this. Her grades also started slipping, and now, looking back, I guess people should have been kinder to her, but she wasn't very kind to me either. We used to fight a lot and my parents always sided with her. They never celebrated any of my achievements, and of course, the last straw was when they straight up refused to pay for me to attend college even after I received my acceptance letter, simply because my sister didn't want that. That was when I left home, and I think even if I was somehow able to bring myself to look past the incident from college, I don't think I'll be able to forget any of that. They are the reason I had to struggle so much in my initial days after I was kicked out, and that's not something you forget or forgive easily. So they can continue to feel bad about whatever has happened. I'm not obliged to make them feel better about it. My friends are right, I had been a doormat for even bothering to let them in just because they had lost a daughter. In reality, the only thing that they were upset about was the fact that they had lost the only daughter who mattered to them, and now they'd have to make do with the backup. It sounds harsh, but that's the truth, and I know that now. Anyway, sorry for ranting, but I just needed to get all that negativity and hatred out of my system somehow. Thanks for reading till the end, and I hope I'll have something more positive to share in a couple of days or whenever I get the time to post next. Until then, goodbye. Update 2. So, a quick little update on the situation with my parents. A week has passed since my last update and 2 weeks since they last visited me, so I've been trying to move on from the situation and go on with my normal life. Today, they showed up at my house again, and I was caught a bit off guard because when I came back home from work, the two of them had been sitting in their car in front of my house and waiting for me to get back home. When they saw me, they came out of the car and told me that they really needed to talk to me about whatever had happened and whatever they had found out about us recently. They said that only by addressing the situation would all of us be able to move on, but honestly, I was not interested in addressing the situation at all. I was tired from work, and honestly, in my head, I had already addressed the situation by telling them the truth and finding out the truth from them. So I told them that I had nothing more to say to them, and it would be wise for them to clear out because otherwise, I would just call the cops. I had no patience for them anymore, and in the past couple of days, the more that I thought about them, the angrier I felt. They had 7 years to try and contact me, but they only did so. They lost one daughter, and that meant that it took them almost 7 whole years to find out the truth about me and how wrongly they had treated me. The fact that they ruined my life over a bunch of lies, I was never going to move on from that, and it was insulting that they thought that they could just make a flimsy little apology and all would be fine once again. I was not having it, and when they refused to leave, I called the cops right in front of them, and then, they started screaming at me about how unfair I was being. Once again, they tried to play the daughter card against me, telling me that they had already lost one daughter, and they were just trying not to lose the other. I actually ended up laughing at that statement, and then I told them that they never had 2 daughters to lose, they only had my sister, and I'm really sorry that they lost her, but I'm not their daughter anymore. I never have been, because they've never treated me like that, and especially in the past couple of years, I have put as much distance as I can between myself and my past, and I've left them behind. Then, they tried to twist my words and accused me of thinking that I was too good for them just because I've made a ton of money now. That was obviously not what I meant. I had meant that I had left them behind emotionally and that I had no attachment with them anymore. I didn't have much to begin with, judging by how they had treated me in the past, but honestly, at the time, I didn't even feel the need to correct them. I'm not one to usually show off my wealth because I find it tacky, but honestly, I have worked hard for it. And I've accomplished everything on my own, without any help from anybody in my family. So when my parents accused me of acting like I was too good for them just because I had so much money now, I just agreed with them. I told them that it was exactly what they thought it was because I knew that arguing with them was just going to end with me wasting more of my energy. And there was no point in doing that. They were not the kind of people who would understand any other perspectives apart from their own. Besides, like I said, I had worked hard, and I deserved this. After I acknowledged that, they just started cussing at me until the cops came, and they were escorted off my property finally. After they were gone, I was able to relax a bit, and I have decided that I'm going to speak to a lawyer so that I can file for a restraining order against them. I don't know if I have the grounds for it because it's not like they have threatened me or whatever, but this is getting on my nerves. I really don't want them visiting again. I really don't want to sell my house and move because I really love this place. It's the first place that I can really call home, and I don't want to sacrifice it just because of my parents. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed. Hopefully, they will realize that I don't want them around and stay away from me. Or better yet, they will give me a reason to file for a restraining order against them. Update 3. Hey, so it's been a couple of months since my last update. I didn't have anything to share, so I kind of forgot about posting here. But anyway, I guess you guys must have figured out that nothing really has happened in the past couple of months. After I called the cops to have them escorted off my property, my parents did not attempt to reach out to me again. But my grandparents did get in touch with me. They apologized to me for everything and said that they have always regretted not believing me when I told them that I was innocent. I didn't have anything against them because, after all, they had helped me out when I needed it, and they had all the reasons to refuse to believe me because of the evidence that had been planted in my room. So I forgave them, and even though I'm not exactly in touch with them consistently, it was from them that I found out that my parents had moved away to the suburbs after selling their house because I just had too many memories of my sister. I guess I can understand where that's coming from. But honestly, I'm just glad that they are not anywhere close to me, and as for me, I've pretty much moved on with my life. I'm doing well in my career, and even though my ex-roommate and best friend did hit a bump in the road recently, we're doing great again. I don't think I'll ever be close to my family. I forgave my grandparents, but that's about it. I don't intend on being close to them because, at the end of the day, they still abandoned me. And my other relatives, I was never close to them in the first place. But it's fine, I'm gonna build my own family and I'm gonna be happy with my life. Things are fine for now. Thank you so much, you guys, for keeping me in mind.